I learned from the Buddhist monks. I've actually met a ghost. I've seen UFOs 3 times. Everything is shared consciousness. There seems to be some convergent force in the background. The Buddha said, one thing he said is, the answer to everything is inside. I've risen to the point I don't care for these things I used to care for. Where are we going with it? Are you trying to convert me to Christianity? Or I avoid things that have dogma and big thick books and commandments. And there's only one commandment in Buddhism, that is respect all life. I live by the intuition of nature, what I see around me.
Hey, I just had an interesting conversation. This one was actually done in a kind of a walking and talking style rather than sitting on a bench. Came across a Buddhist engineer, I think from India, Hindu, maybe Buddhist background. So he preferred to, he said, let's walk into, he enjoys nature very much. So we kind of took a little stroll, didn't go too far, just kind of stood around a little bit, walked around. But yeah, interesting conversation. I tried to basically communicate to him why I think a model of a universe where a single primary mover, God, makes more sense than the idea that he sort of was presenting some sort of a cyclical or steady state universe, but ultimately wanted to get him down to the earth and sort of understand, let him to sort of get to grips with our sinful nature, what God did about it, and this nature being a gift from God and not the idol for us to worship. And so anyway, really good conversation. I hope that some of these things stay with him, and that he looks into the Creator, not the creation, and puts trust in Christ. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought. God bless you, and see you in the next video.
I learned from the Buddhist monks in India, which is my parents' country, some years back. And then, yeah, I stripped all the dogma out of it, and essentially you're left with the energy connection.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, you just asked me before we started filming. You asked me, is there a higher power to this?
Yeah, a sense of a higher power that goes with this, sort of that belief, in addition to the energy. Yeah.
Okay, so absolutely. So, I mean, if you study metaphysics, you will see our perception, our measurement of the electromagnetic field is limited. So, matter, solid, what we perceive as solid, it's like condensed, it's energy that is at such a low frequency that it's not going anywhere. It's like a river. If you imagine there's a blockage, there's little vortices where the water is not moving much. This is the atom basically. So higher frequencies that we can't measure with our equipment. That is what physicists say is dark matter, dark energy. It has a gravitational effect, but there's not much. I mean, they get from CERN reactor, they're finding these particles as proof from the equations. But yeah, apart from that, it's above our dimension. It's resonating too high.
I guess where I was going with that question, that's fine. I sort of understand. My background is a little bit in physics, so I could understand a little bit of what you were saying. But I guess my question was more about you've just described observation, right? You've described the nature of the universe, the underlying forces, the particles. But is there someone kind of in control of it? Do you believe in a creator who has put it all? Because again, going back to physics, right, we do believe that the universe had a beginning, right? Science believes that there was some sort of an expansion, an event, right, that caused the expansion of the universe, and it's still expanding, right? We know that there's a redshift. We know there's a residual microwave background, which gives us confidence as scientists that actually this universe continues to expand, right? So there's a beginning and a continuous expansion. That means there's some sort of a starting point, right? So which would indicate some sort of a potentially a starter, like an ultimate cause, a primary mover.
Okay, there's a different school of thought that says it's continual creation. So you have a torus shape, like a donut, and then everything gets recycled round and round through the center of the donut, like a vortex. So Hinduism says everything goes around, the universe goes around, it gets recreated. So that matches this model of the vortex.
But
So-
does that match the physics models, right? Because again, there's an expansion. There's not necessarily a sense of, if anything, it might be a heat death of the universe, right? The expansion becomes so vast that the atoms become so distant from one another that there's like an eventual heat death, right? But your model would imply that there's some sort of a cyclical thing, some sort of expansion followed by a contraction, but we're not necessarily seeing. I mean, I know I'm aware of the models that would propose something like this, but these are just purely theoretical. There's no observable sort of evidence that would back that up.
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, I'll walk and talk because I feel I can think better. So you can film a bit of trees, whatever you like.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the Newtonian model says that everything is just these ping pong balls that spread out, and then when they've lost all the energy, they just everything dies. But if you say you know physics, you go down to absolute zero in space, 0 Kelvin, the atom is still resonating, right? Where does that energy come from? It comes from the dark energy that is interweaved within our space-time.
Sure.
So we're sharing this space-time with other stuff. Sometimes you get ghosts, sometimes you get UFOs. I've actually met a ghost.
Okay. All right. That's interesting.
I've seen UFOs 3 times. I don't know what they were, but they were definitely not airplanes.
Right.
So I didn't actually see the ghost, but I heard it, and it was confirmed by someone who lived in the house.
Okay. So it was in a house, and there was another person who also had the.
Not at the same time, but
Okay.
they confirmed they actually saw the ghost,
All right. Right.
whereas I only heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very rational. I do an engineering job. I don't hallucinate I don't take any drugs.
Right. Right.
There's definitely something there that appears in our dimension sometimes when the frequencies overlap.
Yeah. So that's interesting, right? You bring that up. I believe in a spiritual world as well, personally, right? So I come from a Christian background, right? And as a Christian, I know that there's I would believe that God created this universe, right? But He created spiritual things as well as the physical things. Physical things we can measure, we can observe, but there's also spiritual nature of the world, sometimes described as, you know, angels and demons and other forces, right?
Yeah.
And so I would certainly agree that there's a aspect to this reality which is more than the eye or the measurement or the instrument can see, right? But would you believe that there's like these things that how do they fit into your kind of model, the Buddhist sort of that kind of model of the universe? How would you ascribe the idea of a ghost, for example, right? Where does that fit into your worldview, into your model?
Okay, so you just being from a Christian background, you believe that there is one entity, one creator.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you give it a masculine gender, which I don't understand because it's a spirit. But anyway, that's what
You could think about it as a convention. I mean, he uses that word for himself, but yeah, it's more of a convention than anything else, right? That would be yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Buddhism and pure spirituality believes that everything is a co-creator. So this tree, and you're both part of the same field.
Okay.
It's not, oh, I'm the boss and I'm God and I command you this and that. It's everything is shared consciousness, part of the field. Just like a big pool of water, you can drop a couple of pebbles anywhere, but the waves will co-interfere.
The difference being though that I don't feel like I have the power necessarily over the creation, as in the sense that I'm not able to change it, right? I'm not able to create myself in the same way, not in the same way. Obviously I can take and reshape it, right? I can take, we as human beings, we can take the fundamental elements, the earth, and leverage the forces within this universe to make something, buildings and bridges and computers and electricity and other things, right? But I could not create an atom. I could not create a piece of matter, a mass. I could not create it, right? Whereas a creator God, that's exactly what he did. He took the energy, he turned it into mass, right? And he can, that's the difference between a creator and myself, right? So that makes us on different planes. Like he's outside of this creation. He's outside of time and space, so to speak, right? So therefore he can govern it, whereas I am within that field, right? That I'm have to deal within the sort of parameters, but I cannot put myself outside of it necessarily.
Okay, there's some disagreement there. There's, for instance, there's a Japanese professor, I forgot his name.
Was it Michio Kaku or?
I forgot. But anyway, he studied this many years and he did experiments with water, and he showed that if you have water in a sealed vessel, it's got a structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you project a certain emotion at it, its structure changes. So
Okay.
then, if it's a nice, pleasant emotion, or classical music, for instance, the structure becomes very regular, like crystalline.
Right.
Beautiful. But then if it's bad emotion, they tried heavy metal music as well, and it just warped and it turned lumpy and irregular.
Okay.
So you can say that that's part of co-creation. So you are imparting a field into what is around you.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll grant you that, right? So I am aware of some experiments, even things beyond that, right? People trying to sort of dabble in things like, telekinesis and remote viewing and other things with some, let's say, some amount of success. But I guess my point was that, by and large, we are, to use your language, we are part of this field, whereas I would say I would put God above the field, meaning outside of the field. So he has full sovereignty, full control, whereas we maybe have it to a limited extent, because we were ultimately made from the same stuff, right? So philosophically speaking, metaphysically speaking, right, if you are made from the same thing, you are just as complex as that thing, but you're not more complex than that, because if you're more complex than that, then you indeed would be God, right?
Well, that depends. You might have a very large effect on the high frequency world, just like they might have on us. They do have on us, like the atom, for instance. I just said it doesn't stop resonating at 0 degrees Kelvin. So there is a dimension that is feeding energy, even when we think that everything is dead and frozen. So conversely, your consciousness might be powering into another dimension.
Perhaps, but if so, we're not aware of it, right? If so, we're not aware of it, certainly. But again, I'm trying to distinguish between us and God. For God, all possibilities would be equally visible and at his grasp, because that's by definition, right? Someone who's outside of that field or outside of that space would have control over it, right? So I believe, again, going back to the Christian worldview, he has set the things in motion. And he also sustains it every second, every picosecond of the way. He still sustains it, and that he knows where it's going, right? So he can see the ultimate, the destiny of all things, right? It's because he finds himself in full control, whereas we might have a partial perspective there. But like, and the other evidence that I would put for that, like the fine tuning, right? The fact that the universe is so finely tuned with, you know, constants, gravitational constant, electromagnetic force, you know, nuclear forces are so finely tuned that if there were anything other than what they are, this universe would cease to exist. It would either be too hot or too cold. It would not sustain life, in other words. So I feel like this universe is specifically created with a specific purpose, right? So it's not just a random thing where we sort of are grasping for meaning, but I think there was a sense in a purpose from the creator, right? He created this, and he created it seemingly with a specific purpose, and we seem to be part of that purpose. It seems to be benefiting us, right? We find ourselves very suited for this Earth, which is very suited for the solar system, which is very suited for the part in the galaxy where it finds itself, which itself is very suited in the place of the universe where it finds itself, right? So all of it seems to be very finely arranged for us, right? So I feel like there's some sort of a purpose. There's a sense in which this is not an accident. And not just that, but like God even doesn't pretend that it will be an accident. He actually wants us to be in this relationship, right? There's a back and forth. He's not like someone who walks away and observes us, but he's one who sets it up with a purpose of an ongoing interactive relationship. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's not accidental. The distance of the sun from the earth is no accident. The formation of life could not happen by ping pong balls just bouncing about.
Yep.
And the amount of water we have on this planet is not an accident. The cohesive force between water molecules is not an accident. It's just right for the texture, the flow.
Yeah.
But how do you know that your consciousness, the consciousness of everything put together, has not made all these scientific variables, rather than a single guy saying, I am God, I make this, I make that. It's probably everything put together, including yourself. Well, you weren't there at the beginning of the earth, yeah. But whatever, even minerals, they say, have some level of consciousness because they have resonance. Yeah.
Oh, so my answer to that would be because it seems to be a complex design, right? So when we have, and we can use our own analogy as human beings when we put ourselves into as designers of complex systems. You have to have, I don't know, you said you're an engineer, I'm engineer as well, right? But when you think about complex systems, right, you have to cast a vision out there. You have to, in your mind's eye, have an idea, what is it that you want to achieve, right? And then once you have that straight, then you set out the steps by which you want to achieve those things. And these seem to be very ordered steps, right? That take you from putting things together, putting components that work very well together to come up to a working system, right? Now, that does require some sort of a purposeful thought, right? Which gets more difficult if you imagine a world where everyone's kind of with their own consciousness, sort of somehow unconsciously thinking similar thoughts, because that would result in some sort of a maybe chaos, right? Because how could we all agree in a very, very complex system with finely tuned, forces and constants?
The tree doesn't care about you, but it does its tree business and
but what I'm saying,
oxygen for you.
What I'm saying is none of us human beings, right, could not even create a new species of a tree. Like we could not go from nothing to create a new species of a tree. With all of our technology, with all of our advancements, we still don't have enough that we could create a new species of tree from nothing, right? Or a new life from nothing. We can only reconstitute again. We can take a seed we can take a cell, change its DNA, or hybridize a seed and cross-pollinate and other things, and we have new species. But that's reconstitution. That's not creation. What I'm saying, creation is a very highly specified task, right? You have to know what you're doing. It's a very complicated thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't come about easily, right? So what I'm saying, my argument was that those highly specified tasks required a design kind of thinking, which is usually best achieved with an intelligence, right? And the more organized that intelligence is, the better the outcome is.
Yeah, so back to my point, the tree doesn't care about you, but it serves you with oxygen.
Right.
It recycles. When it drops its leaves, the leaves just get recycled by fungus or whatever.
But it doesn't know it's doing any of that stuff, right? That's its purpose, correct? But it did not decide to do that, right?
It's doing a selfish thing, just like everything else is doing a selfish thing. But a balance is achieved by competition.
By competition, what do you mean by that? Sorry.
Right, so you have predators who, that bird will be eaten by a cat or something if there's too many birds, or it will develop a disease, or this tree will, you'll get some elm disease or something. There's always something to keep balance in nature.
Okay.
And these things evolve for their own purpose. The earthworm doesn't care about you, but it makes soil to grow your food.
Yeah. Fair. It doesn't care, right? But what I'm saying is that, but somehow it all hangs together, right? Almost in a very, I'm going to use loosely the word miraculous, meaning it's so complicated, these interconnections, right? And it's so finely balanced, right? That one thing throws off, like that's why we have ecological disasters, right? When, let's say, a species of that worm were to disappear, the whole system could collapse, or take a while for it to balance itself out, right? So everything is so seems like it's finely arranged, right?
Well, yeah, it is finely arranged because everything is just doing its job. There's lots of different conscious beings, different elements of consciousness that are forming one massive intelligence.
But you're saying using the word conscious, but like they're not aware. This is what I'm saying. You've agreed. It's almost like it's a selfish act. So none of them know what the whole is. They all know maybe their part, and even that they are not necessarily fully well aware of, right? So how could the whole come together with actors that are seemingly unconscious of their role in the play, right? I mean, when we put the play together, right? Even watching the actual sort of movie or play, right? The actors kind of know their role, they do their part, right? They come in and go, but that's part of a story, right? That a playwright has put together this story, right?
Yeah.
So who's put together this story? That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Do you think would you say that there isn't a story creator?
So this is where we start agreeing. There seems to be some convergent force in the background.
Right, okay.
Right. So you can call it God if you like, some people call it Allah. The Hindus call it probably 1,000 names, but there's one name the Hinduism uses called Shakti, Pran Shakti, and that is the overall force, life force, and this is where we can say there's something metaphysical that is above our limited intelligence. Our intelligence, you can make a smartphone or a car, but you can't make the planet Earth with all the life on it.
Correct.
We're not that smart. We think we are the rulers.
Yeah.
But we're not.
We're not. I agree with that. So that you're right. We agree on that. But do you think that if there is such an intelligence, if there is such a force, whatever the name we use for it, do you think it has revealed itself to us? Because this is what exactly the religions would then claim, right? You said whether it's Allah or whether it's Yahweh, which is the Christian, Judeo-Christian God, right? Mm-hmm. There is a sense in which God has revealed himself to the creation, right? So as Christian, right, I would say God has spoken to people, to the people throughout history, which is recorded in the Bible, right? To the prophets.
Yeah.
He has spoken about. He has said, "This is, I have created it. Here's how I've done it, and ultimately, here's my will for your lives. Here's how to live a ordered and good life. Here's how you should do it. Here's what you should do. Here's what you shouldn't do, to live a good life." Do you think that a God like that has revealed Himself to His people?
Well, Buddha went out into the wilderness. He was a prince. He was born in the royal family. And then he said, "I've had enough of this." So he went out for 6 years and he meditated. And he came back he was, obviously, Hindustan was, they had these guys, sadhus, the holy men, the Hindus. So he came back to them and he said, "Look, I've got some new ideas. Everything is connected. There's no such thing as I am me, that is you. Everything is part of the same system." And then also everything changes, everything's in flux. Don't attach to anything, like people die, the world changes, whatever. If you grasp at something and try and hold on to it, you will suffer. If you let things change and flow with the change, you will be at peace. So, sorry, where am I going with this?
So I was asking, whether do you think that the God has revealed Himself directly to His people? I know you mentioned the example of Buddha, but I mean, he never claimed to be God, right? He just claimed to be, he was like you said, like he found this sort of philosophy, a way of living, maybe, but he did not claim that he was maybe making a way of living to reach to a some sort of a nirvana state or some sort of a unification with God, but he never claimed that he was God, right?
No, in fact, the converse, he said, "Look, I'm human. You can question me as much as you want.
Yeah.
Don't worship me. Don't build statues of me," which they later did as Buddhism spread northwards into China, etc. They started building statues of Buddha, which he said, while he's alive, he said, "Don't do this. Don't worship me."
Right.
So he went into nature to get his inspiration. So he obviously observed a lot of natural cause and effect during his time, and he put that into a formula for living.
Okay. Again, going back to my question, right? That's one, obviously one description, right? But it doesn't necessarily explain the revelations of God that we have in other scriptures. Now, do you think that they're not right, or they are right, but they're just misinterpreted, or?
Okay, I think anything that is disconnected from nature is wrong. Anything that determines too much rules and dogma is wrong. Your spirit, the Buddha said, one thing he said is, the answer to everything is inside. You look into your heart, that will answer any dilemma. So if you're not sure of, should I take this job or should I marry so-and-so, your heart already knows. If you try and rationalize with the brain, you probably screw it up. But if you look into your heart, you always get the right answer. And the more experience you get in life, the more fine-tuned these answers will become, the more right you'll become by listening to that inner voice.
Okay.
You can't kid yourself. If you know something's, I mean, some people they said, oh no, 5 years ago they said I'm not gonna, wear a
Mask,
mask
whatever,
or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, this was their intuition. They looked in and said, yeah, all of this is nonsense. You can't kid yourself. If you know something is right or wrong,
Yeah.
it's in you. If some people, they're born into a family that supports football, and they go and they buy the football kit, they go and stand in the terrace and they wave rattles and they chant, and then they're thinking of, why am I doing this, in their inner heart.
Right. Right. Okay, now it's interesting, right? Because this is where some of the, we can come back to the point of like dogmas and what does that sort of do to religion. But you said, find the answers in the heart. Like now, it's interesting, Christian thought would say, and God did say, the human heart is evil above all things. Now let me explain what is meant by that, right? Because to one extent, I think I know what you're saying, right? Because I think I agree that through experience, over life experience, we can build up some sort of an instinctual understanding of the world, which is called wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And you could attribute that to the heart, right? As in, sometimes it becomes instinctual because it's not that I'm rationally thinking through it, it's that I'm reliant on my experiences to come to some sort of decision. If that's all we think about, then okay, fine. But where the biblical view of the heart is evil above all things is that oftentimes our heart makes such decisions that benefit ourselves only, right? Often to the detriment of our fellow human being, or to the detriment of this creation even, right? And so, and that's what the Bible in its essence is there to uncover this sort of
so
truth.
where are we going with it? Are you trying to convert me to Christianity, or do you?
Well, we're having discussion, right? So I'm just sharing a different biblical perspective. You just shared your perspective with me, right? So I'm just saying that I'm looking for your reaction as well, right? So being my heart, right? My heart, I can kind of resonate with that, right? Because oftentimes I would make the kind of decisions that would benefit me, right? That would ultimately be for my benefit, not for, like, for example, if there's the last burger in the world, and we're both burger lovers, there might be a conflict, right, between us, right, because we'll both desire it, and we'll start scheming in our minds. Okay, how do we get the most of it, right? How do you get the most out of it, and how do I get the most out of it? Because that's what the human heart ultimately is. We want to be God in our own world. We want to be someone who is getting the best for ourselves. I mean, that's something that's true, that I feel it's true, but also biblically that's what it's describing. That's the problem of human, what they call sin, right? I mean, do you agree with that, not agree with that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so basically we all compete. We're not pure of heart, that's what you say.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
So could the answers be in the human heart, right? If we're not of pure, right? If we're agreeing that we're not of pure heart, to your previous statement, right? Could all of the answers be in the human heart, therefore?
Well, is that getting the burger, does that really come from your heart, or does it come from your survival skills?
It's just an example, right? But you could replace the burger with, I don't know, love for, advancement, career advancement, love for kind of power, love for status, love for things of this world, for material possessions, that kind of stuff, right?
If you go really pure, you don't need any of that. You're happy. Like
That'd be great, like if everyone's like, but is that truly? I mean, I don't observe people. I mean, unless you lock yourself up in a monastery somewhere, right, where you are disconnected from the world and you don't have any cares of the world, you might have that kind of an approach. But to 99.9% of the people, right, they are living in this world, right, and they're struggling with that every single day.
Okay. I mean, this is a relevant question for the time because we can see everything is collapsing deliberately. So the notion, I'm glad I'm not like 20 years old now, because I wouldn't know what career to choose, or what values to follow. I'm glad I've seen society in its heyday. I built a career, I chased the money, I did the stocks and shares, I traveled the world, I did all these human things that we copy other people, we think that's cool, I want to be that, I want to do it. And then personally, I've reached a point I don't give a damn anymore. I work 3 months a year just to pay the bills. What else do I want?
Okay.
Now I'm designing a nomadic house, so I don't want to be stuck with some asset and then owe the bank money, have to pay that off, and have title deeds. I don't care for any of this. I could be using my money now to be driving some flash car and going to venues and stuff. I'm walking in a park on a Sunday. I've risen to the point I don't care for all these things I used to care for.
Which is great, right? I mean, it's again, sounds like you've risen yourself above certain petty things. But I guess where this conversation was going, right, is that Buddha said purity of heart, and I said, look, heart is evil above all things, because that's what the Bible says. I guess where it matters is what happens after we die, right? Because presumably Buddha was saying those things is because to achieve some sort of a state of, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because you're probably closer to this philosophy, right? To achieve some sort of a state of reconnection to the nirvana, right? To the state, to the Brahma, right? To unification with the universe, right? Whereas I would say actually where this matters is that because if there is a God, someone who's above this creation, we also believe that he's going to, we are going to come to face him at the end of our lives, right? And so those things that we have done that are not perfect, right, are going to be a problem in that sense, right? Because we will have been found that we haven't lived in a pure way, that we have done all those bad things, right? So there's a judgment to come, right?
Okay, have you ever spoken to anyone who's had a near-death experience and come back?
Have I spoken? No, but I've listened to and watched a lot of testimonies of people who have.
So what did they say?
They said that when they have that experience, that they have an experience of light, some sort of a light.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they actually have the experience of seeing someone like a Jesus figure, right, or a figure.
Depending on your culture.
Depends on the culture, but actually, there was studies made that did across cultures, right, and I think even people who have not, perhaps, understood the name Jesus, there was still a figure, some sort of a guide, or someone, right, whom they have faced, right, it was a being of pure light. But also there's also evidence of near the NDEs, near death experiences, where people have come to face with darkness and with some almost like judgment, that they've come back shaken by that, right? Because they transformed their lives, because they could see that there is a negative side of, it's not always positive, what I'm trying to say. It's not always a light and purity and kind of nirvana. It's always there's also a darker side of the post-death experiences.
Okay. Well, all the people I've listened to about near-death experiences, they've but they've said that it's a warm, loving consciousness you join. You become a part of a consciousness, and it doesn't judge you, it doesn't hate you, it doesn't punish you. In fact, I did meet someone. I was working with a guy probably 5 years ago, and he had a near-death experience. He was crossing the road and with his friend, and then suddenly went up into the sky, and he was going through the stars, and then he saw these groups of lights, and then as he went closer to them, there were groups of people, and he was drawn towards one group, and then he noticed that was his family members who died, and he noticed one of them was, he only recognized him from a photograph. That was grandfather from World War One, who he'd never met, who died in World War One, and then he was with his family for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden he was drawn back out of this group through the stars again, and then he woke up on the street, and his friend was giving him chest compressions.
Oh, so was he hit by a car?
He was hit by a car.
Oh, he was hit by a car. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's interesting. Okay, all right.
I mean, I've known someone else who was nighttime when she was asleep. She was walking around her kitchen, not in body, but she could see her body asleep, and she said it scared her. She didn't like the experience, but she couldn't control when it would happen sometimes.
Right.
So I've kind of lost the thread now. I'll do that. So.
Okay, maybe because I'm thinking probably a lot more of your time than you expected. I don't want to sort of hold you up too much, but I guess you talked about return from death to life, and I mentioned the person of Jesus before, right? Because the idea is that he came back from being dead, right? He came back 3 days later. He rose from being dead to being alive. Like, what's your thought of Jesus? Because he seems to be splitting all of the religions and all of the philosophies by how they think of him, right? Muslims think that he's just a prophet. Christians think of him as the Messiah and the Son of God, who gave up his life for the sins of the world. Buddhists just maybe think of an enlightened being, right? So what's your thinking of him?
Okay, he was. You get guys nowadays, women as well, who are, followed because they say something radical, and Jesus was against the Roman state. He
wasn't against the Roman state. No, he wasn't. He was. He said his kingdom is not of this world, right? So when he was being confronted by Pontius Pilate to ask him, are you a king, or do you want to be? Are you trying to take my kingdom? Effectively, he's asking him in the trial. He says, I am a king, but I'm not a king of this world, right? My kingdom is from heaven, right?
Yeah.
So he had nothing to do, and he was not trying to create an army. He's not trying to usurp political systems. Even in fact, when he was confronted with, should we pay taxes to Caesar, that was one of his famous responses. He says, look, take a coin whose inscription is on the coin. It says Caesar's inscription. Well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's, right? So he had no point that he wanted to sort of overturn the political authorities.
I don't know enough about Christianity. I'm corrected there, sorry. But yeah, I mean, he was human, and he, just like a lot of humans today, some people have. I mean, Michael Jackson was, when I was growing up, was regarded as a god figure.
Yeah, he didn't rise from the dead. I mean, he died, right? And he not only died, but he died in very sort of sad circumstances, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he wasn't like dying for a higher cause. What I'm trying to say, he's died because like his career was, took a break, right? He's trying to come back, and there's tiredness, and people that he surrounded himself with were not really, supportive of him. But that's not like Jesus was.
Well, he declared that he was leaving Sony Records.
Yeah.
He's finishing his contract.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And shortly after he died. So
yeah,
you can make whatever you want of that.
Yeah, no, exactly what I'm saying. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like the human intrigue. I guess what he wasn't claiming that he died for like a higher purpose. Where, again, going back to Jesus, he said his mission was to come to this earth for the purpose of death. He actually knew that he was going to die. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't
I mean, we all know that we're going to die.
Yeah, no, but he knew that he was going to be crucified. He predicted his crucifixion. He said, to his disciples, says, in 3 days, I'm going to be arrested, I'm going to be crucified. And actually, that is for your benefit, because he said, I came to this world to be a ransom for many, right? He came to give his life as a mission. That was his mission. And on the cross, he was hanging on the cross. He wasn't angry. He wasn't lashing out at his persecutors. He said, it is finished. My mission is finished. Finally, my mission has come to an end. So he achieved what he came to achieve, and that, in Christian thought, is that he came because of that other thing, the problem that we talked about before, the human heart problem. In Christian thought, we cannot solve our human heart problem, right? We cannot erase the things that we have done, and that's what Jesus came to do. He came to give his life, right, as to take on the punishment, the wrath of God that is upon the sins of this world. He came to take it on himself, right? So his sacrifice effectively was a sacrifice for the benefit of anyone who would believe in him, anyone who would trust him. He says, you will have eternal life. So just like he rose, and 3 days later he rose from the dead, he said, anyone who is in me, who trusts in me, will likewise be raised in the resurrection, right, on the judgment day.
Okay, so I don't necessarily believe that he was superhuman, or he could feed 1,000 people with 2 fishes and whatever. I even doubt that he came back from the dead. Really, it's possible after a crucifixion you can still be alive. There's been people who've been buried in a coffin, and then they start knocking on the coffin, and they have to open the coffin back.
Sure.
It's possible that he was. He's reported to be a very robust physical specimen. Probably he survived the crucifixion, and they thought he was dead, but really he was just he recovered enough to then come back.
Well, actually, the doctors would disagree with that, right? Because the other parts of his account of crucifixion, he was speared, right? He was perforated with a spear by one of the Roman soldiers, and what came out was water and blood, and so the doctors would sort of say, because the water came out, that means that his lungs and his organs were filling up. Because when you hang on the cross for an elongated period of time, your bodily fluids start collecting, right? And when you get punctured and the water starts coming out, that means you're kind of approaching death, right? So if he survived that, right, first of all, the Romans would have not been good in their job, and they were expert killers. But then he was laid in a tomb, which was covered up with a stone. But also, if he did come up 3 days later, he wouldn't be in a state where he would be able to walk around and eat and talk to his disciples, which is exactly what he did, right? He said even to Thomas, if you remember the story, doubting Thomas, who said, only if I put my finger and my arm in his wounds, I will believe that that's truly Jesus. Jesus says, go ahead, here you go. And he uncovered, says, here's the wound, put your arm here, and put your finger in my wrist, where my nails were. And that's what caused the Thomas, who was the doubting one, to believe, because he was faced with a being who's just resurrected, who he still carried the wounds on his body, but those wounds were just to demonstrate his identity, but no longer having any hold of it all over his body, right? So that answers that, I think, objection.
Okay, well, I wasn't there. It was 2,000 odd years ago. So, you've probably got more clinical insight than I have. There's things that people do that are regarded as supernatural. There are practitioners who can heal by touching someone. They can cure cancer, things like this. So
I think in most cases those have been kind of proven to be charlatans, right? In most cases, apart from, right? I mean, the healings that I'm certainly aware of, certainly spiritual healings. Yes, there are those as well. But especially if there would be healing in the name of, let's say, in the name of God or in the name of Jesus. I'm aware, certainly from a Christian perspective, there's a lot of healings that have happened like that. But I'm also aware of the charlatans, right, who are sort of fake healing, claiming to extract certain parts of the body, which are just ultimately animal parts that they're very skilled at sort of showing. But anyway, I mean, we can theorize. We can theorize quite a lot about what Jesus was and what he might have been, but he wasn't there to start a human movement to the extent that he wanted power. Like all of these people, right? They want some sort of a power for themselves.
He's done pretty well so far, hasn't he?
Well, what I was going to say, yes, is that he claimed to his disciples, like, if you follow me, you will have trouble in this world. You will be persecuted. You will not have riches. You will not have money. You, in fact, will be the ones who will be ridiculed and mocked. And that's exactly what happened to the first church, right? And so the Roman state turned against them. They persecuted them. They put them to death. They felt that they were worshiping someone who is their king above Caesar, right? And so it was more of a question of allegiance. Who is your king? But in the same time, the Christians were the ones who were still not lashing out against the state. They didn't turn terrorists, like we see Muslims today. They would turn terrorists, right, for example. They didn't. They still continued to believe and they continued to die for their faith. In fact, they started carrying, because Romans had this practice of, let's say, leaving the infants that they didn't want, whether it's the female infants or infants with some sort of defect. They started caring after them, right? They started looking after the people, after the sick, after the lepers, right? Leprosy was a big problem to the extent the lepers were put in different colonies. No one wanted to look after them. Christians went out there because they were driven by the example of Jesus, right? That's what their motivation was. It wasn't for power. It wasn't for gain. They were driven by the love of God that God had for them, and then, which in turn they wanted to show to the people, because that's what he asked them to do. Is they said, look, love your neighbor, love your enemy even, right? And they try to put that in practice, right? So we cannot equate Jesus with anyone other than someone who really rises above any other human example that we have in the world, because apart from his miracles, right, he did something that no one else did, and he taught like no one else did in the world.
Yeah, okay. So, I'd like to say I'm not interested in joining any religion, and I avoid things that have dogma and big thick books and commandments. And, there's only one commandment in Buddhism, that is respect all life. So other than that, I live by the intuition of nature, what I see around me.
Okay.
Which is why I spend time in it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. No, and I'm not here to. Well, number one, I'm not taking signatures or not signing up anyone to anyone's church. I'm not here to do that, right? But I think, obviously, other than a conversation and you have been very sort of respectful, and hopefully I have tried to be as well. But I think my idea is that people often associate Christianity with the things that they must do, or like you said, the dogmas and the books and the activities and the commandments. And it's true that there's some of that, but that's not the core message of Christianity. The core message of Christianity, right? What the word is, the gospel, right? The good news. There's some really, really good news here, right? And that is the death of Jesus has paid for our sins, right? And what he wants from us is to be in a relationship, right? So I, as a Christian, I feel like I'm in a relationship with the Almighty, right? Not because of the good things that I've done, not because I have anything like to show for my good works and charitable things, that because I'm holier than anyone else. No, I'm not. I'm not better than anyone else. But I feel like I've entered into a relationship with the Almighty through the one who died for my sins, right? And then rose to life. And now he wants to know me, and he wants to be with me. He wants to have my very soul, right? And then from my scientific perspective, I understand, and I could investigate the historical, that he's truly there, that wasn't made up. But from my heart, going back to the heart, right? He's changed it, right? So he's changed it to the point that where I started to believe in him, I started to change the way I looked at nature, the way I looked at people. Now I look at them with love, with desire for them to know a better way, with desire for them to know the God who created all of this, so they don't have to just marvel at the creation and worship the creation, but they could worship the one who created the very nature that is a gift to us, right? That's how I think of it. It's what could be best than getting to reach the one who created all of these things, right? That's to me the best thing.
I work on what I can prove as much as possible. If I meet some spectacular being that comes down on a chariot or whatever, then yeah, okay, I'll sign up to whatever. But until that day, I look at everyday science and metaphysics, and I look into my heart and I say, what is actually the truth? I don't just take things up like, oh yeah, there's this God and wonderful and all that. I actually question everything.
Yeah.
With the same rationale that I used to do my engineering career.
Absolutely, same thing with me. I became a Christian in my 30s after having had like I said, my background is in science and physics and computer science. That's the stuff that I studied, right? So I came to my position of faith, not blindly believing it, but actually questioning it, investigating, and finding some really, really good answers for what we observe, the universe that we observe scientifically, actually aligns with what the Bible seems to speak, for example, right? To me, those are the correlations. It wasn't the be all and end all. Like I said, there's an element of faith and there's an element of experiential transformation, spiritually speaking, but both things kind of work together for belief. Yeah.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, there's somewhere quoted at the end of days, is it Exodus? The trumpet of the Lord shall sound.
Yes.
And time will be no more.
Yes.
Does this refer to nuclear war?
That's interesting. I think I've heard some similar interpretations, right? So it says it will be the trumpet of the archangel Michael, with the archangel with this trumpet. You know, the heaven will come down. Heaven will come down at the end of the age. Is it nuclear war? I mean, would you say that it will be like a siren? The siren that precedes the nuclear.
No, the trumpet being the bombs.
Oh, the trumpet being the bombs. Oh. I've heard people hypothesize that, so I think it's I don't think anyone said for sure. Like it's maybe it's possible, but and maybe just as likely there will be some sort of a supernatural sound. So, for example, right, people have been hearing recently these sounds like low hums and stuff like that. They could not explain where this is coming from, right? Or even recently, there was in the United States, there was a meteorite, right, that sort of cut through. It was an iron nickel, I think, meteorite, and when it was coming down through its speed that it was coming down through the atmosphere, that caused a number of sonic booms across multiple states, right? So imagine some sort of maybe an event that is connected to some sort of astronomical event. It doesn't have to be nuclear warfare, but could be maybe an astronomical event that causes a reverberation of sound. Even, we have examples also of volcanoes, Krakatoa, right? When that thing blew off, like you could hear the sound like thousands of miles away because of the just the intensity of that explosion. Could be many, many different natural causes for the trumpet, if indeed it will be something that will be correlated with a natural cause, or it could be supernatural as well. So difficult to say, but maybe.
Yeah. What you just said about the low vibrational humming.
Yeah.
The Venezuelans said this. They, when they were recently, America went in there for whatever reason. The Venezuelan military reported that before the ships entered, there was a low frequency hum, and the soldiers were like trembling and they started bleeding from ears and stuff, and they collapsed on the ground.
That's interesting. I mean, there's also weaponry, right? I mean, I don't know if you heard the cases where embassies, right, were attacked. I forgot which country it was. Maybe it was in Mexico or somewhere. I forgot where it was, but directed energy weapons were used and directed at embassies, and embassy staff got very, very extremely sick as a result of that. So who knows what's going on, what kind of experimental weaponry is being used, but microwave-based rays or whatever it is. So those are quite scary things, I would say.
Yeah. And nothing in the Bible it says there was the word. I can't remember exactly what it says, but there was a sound that created a resonance that created everything.
So the word, right? The word, the logos.
God said, "Let there be light."
Exactly. Yeah. God said, "Let there be," right? So, and then later we have in the Gospel of John, Jesus is being described as the Word through which everything was created, right? Which is an interesting metaphysical concept, right? Which puts, I don't know if you, from a computer science engineering perspective, right? I would resonate with that quite a lot, right? Because it says, look, information is above the physical thing, right? So you have to have an idea, the will, and an idea and a purpose and a design comes before the instantiation of that design. So when God says, "Let there be," to me, this basically says God has had a design in his mind and is now implementing it, right? And is implementing it through whatever kind of ways that he does it. He's not revealing that to us, right? But maybe the result of that is this expansion of the universe, right? Which we can see in the microwave background radiation. Is that his voice? The remnants of this voice is the microwave background radiation that we could see from Hubble. I mean, that's a fascinating idea, right?
Yeah. Well, we can see it. The physicists are showing now that an atom is not just like a nucleus with electrons. It's actually a resonance pattern. It's electromagnetic energy. Mm-hmm. When you reach a certain, they can emulate this with sand on a worktop, and then they put a speaker under it.
And it reaches patterns, creates.
And it creates atomic shapes. Mm-hmm. So that you can interpret as God saying the word, and then
things coming into it could be absolutely, it could be and these are the things I, as a Christian, again, I look forward to. If in heaven, where I believe I will be with God, I will have so many questions for him, and it says the entire universe will be at our disposal, right? So I fully believe that I should be able to, and I would be able to understand some of the mysteries of the universe, and be able to travel throughout the universe without restrictions or that I currently experience, right? And I look forward to understanding how is it that you did this, and how did this come about? And there's infinite years of discovery and marvel that await me in presence with him. So that's what I certainly have joy and look forward to.
Well, back to the near-death experiences, there's people say you lose, you're no longer yourself, you join a mass consciousness. It's like you don't matter anymore, because you join an energy that is so massive and loving that the self disappears totally.
Did you have any other questions, or is that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think we've covered everything.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been really good to speak to you. It's been really amazing. This is the first time I've done it so much like in this sort of nature setting, but it's I'm glad that we did it, because it was a good, nice background with nice audio cover.
This is the reality.
This is the reality.
Your ultimate reality.
Yeah. Thank you again for your time.